Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counsellor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Today I am so grateful to have with me a very special guest, and her name is Dr. Gina Cleo. Now, Dr. Gina Cleo is one of the world's leading experts in habit change and well-being. She has a PhD in habit change and is an adjunct professor at Bond University. She also holds a bachelor in health sciences with a double major in biomedical and sports science and masters of nutrition and dietetics. Her research has been published in highly reputable medical journals globally, and she has appeared in over 200 news outlets, including many of Australia's major television networks, print and online publications. In January 2024, Gina released her first book, The Habit Revolution, and it is already climbing up the bestseller charts. Now, the reason I am so excited to have Dr. Gina here is, of course, because of all her expertise and the wealth of knowledge that she will bring to this episode, but also because she was a victim of narcissistic abuse, and her insights and the way she was able to heal, and her story I know is going to be so beneficial for every one of you listening today. So welcome, Dr. Gina. Thank you so much for joining us.
So good to be with you, Nova. Thank you for that lovely introduction as well.
My absolute pleasure. Now, Gina, yes, you have all of this expertise and clearly a beautiful, intelligent woman with so many letters after a name. You could play a game of Scrabble with them. But you were a victim too. And this is something that we need to really, put it out there, that anyone can become a victim of narcissistic abuse, even someone in the mental health profession. So, Gina, I want to hear all about your book. Absolutely. I know everyone out there does too. But I want to hear, if you will, your story and how you came to find yourself with your abuser, the narcissist.
Yeah. So, Nova, you know parts of the story from when we met in Brisbane at the Writers' Festival, but I guess for the listeners, where do I start? So I met the man of my dreams, or so I thought. It was about 10 years ago, and it was instant chemistry. And we lived together, we bought a house together, we had, the white picket fence, the dog, the dream careers, we traveled the world, and we were just so happy. Like, everything just was great. And during the height of COVID, he really wanted to get married. And I was like, look, let's wait. We can't have our family here. And he's like, no, I really, really want you to be my wife. So I would really like to do that. We'd been together for about 6 years at that time. And so we had a small little wedding in our backyard, and it was beautiful. But I started to feel that he became really distant. So sort of like 6 months before we got married, he became distant, both emotionally and physically. I sort of describe it like he was a puff of smoke, like he was there. I could see him there, but I couldn't grasp him. I couldn't connect with him. And on one particularly lonely Saturday, I was in the kitchen baking. He went down to the shops. And I opened his computer, which was just on the kitchen bench, to grab a recipe. And his computer, the text messages were linked to his phone. So his computer and his phone are linked together. And as I'm looking up this recipe, these text messages start to pop up on the computer screen. And it was a live exchange that he was having with a prostitute that he was just about to meet with.
A live exchange. You actually caught him in the act. Oh, my goodness.
He's asking how much. He asked for photos. She sent photos. He's asked for the address and he messaged, I'm on my way. And my heart stopped. I actually hyperventilated and fainted. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then when I came to, I obviously being a researcher, I looked through everything else and I found hundreds more. There were lots more messages to different prostitutes, around the area that we live in, around his workplace. He would go during his lunch break at work or on the way to work or on the way home from work. And it was obviously, I don't know if it was an addiction or a disease or what, but it was something that was a constant and continuous thing in his life. So there's this real like double life thing going on.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So how did you, it must have been such a shock. How did you compartmentalize that level of betrayal? Like I noticed that you said, I started, researching it, and you also used the words, what was this, an addiction or was this a disease? So it sounds like you were already trying to come up with something that was external to him, that how it maybe wasn't his fault, and maybe you could fix it.
You're so spot on to pick that up from the very little I said there, and like brilliant. That's exactly what I was doing, because he was like, his nickname was the Saint. He was the kindest, most gentle, most pure human being. His dream in life was to open up a shelter for children who needed some support. He was the guy who, if somebody was moving house, he'd be the first person there to help them move house. He was helping my dad fix his boat up on his days off. Like, he was just the saint. He was the most beautiful man and adored me. Like, I believed he adored me at the time because of the love bombing. Every day he was showering me with love and affection. And so I did compartmentalize this. I was like, there's got to be something wrong. There's got to be more, because the person that I know and the person that I'm seeing in the evidence of these messages can't be the same person.
Yeah. You're doing what every single victim of narcissistic abuse does, Gina, when you have that earth-shattering shapeshift. That I know this person, and this person who's betraying me, they can't be the real person. There's got to be a reason, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And all the while you start to heighten your threshold for abuse.
That's right. Yeah. So what happened, like when I saw everything, I took photos of everything and I sent it all to my mum for safekeeping. And I messaged him and I said, we need to talk. And he came home, 20 minutes later after his 15-minute treatment. And I very calmly said to him, is there anything that you need to tell me? And he denied. And I said, well, where were you just now? And he's like, I was at Bunnings. I'm like, well, what'd you get from Bunnings? He's like, I couldn't find what I wanted and was stumbling. Like, obviously he knew I was lying. I knew he was lying. Yeah. And and he just kept up the facade of, there's nothing I need to tell you. You're the love of my life. And then I showed him the evidence that I found. I showed him all the photos, the Google Map history, the bank statements. I showed him the emails, like everything that I had found, his history and his the search history and his computer, everything pointed to the fact that he was guilty, and guilty from well before when we were married.
Yeah. So did he drop to his knees and beg your forgiveness and go, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry?
I wish. We know narcissists don't do that though, do they? He made up some story that was completely fabricated. He was like, I thought about it, but I just went outside. And then I was like, no, I love my wife too much. And I came straight home. I didn't actually go in, and just made all this stuff up.
Yeah.
Now, I was on the ground at this stage wailing. Like, I could not believe that this was my life. I adored this man. Oh my gosh, like more than anything. And I just kept saying to him, I gave you my whole heart. Like, you had my everything. And this is it. Like, I just can't. I don't know what's happening.
How could you do this to me? It's beyond comprehension, isn't it?
Yeah. He packed a bag that day and left when I stayed with a friend, I think, and I was home by myself. And it was like my mind cracked. It was like, Gina, if you're so wrong about him, what else are you wrong about? Is the sky even blue? Are these people who claim to be your parents even your parents? Yeah. Do we even need to brush our teeth every day? I don't know, because I was sure about him and I was wrong about that. Yeah. And I'm sure about all these other things that are constant and stable in my life, but I'm probably wrong about those as well. Yeah. And I just felt like I lost the very foundations of my life.
Yeah. So for everyone who's listening today, this is what Gina went through, and this is what you are going through when you are told something was not real, that you were so invested in it and felt so real. It destroys your ability to trust your instincts, as Gina said. If I was wrong about that and that felt so real, there's got to be other things going on in my life that aren't real too. So it shatters your confidence and your ability to make decisions and trust that you are who you are. And it just, your self-esteem plummets.
That's right. And it's such an awful scenario to be in, where you feel estranged from yourself, where you don't trust yourself, you don't know how you fit into this world anymore, but also the whole world becomes this different place where it's terrifying. And you thought all these things were the way they were, and now you're realizing they're not at all, actually. And there's this whole underground going on, and it feels so big at the time. And you're simultaneously recognizing the abuse, but you're also rationalizing and minimizing it to try to cope with all that emotional pain, because it's too much.
That's that cognitive dissonance that we all engage in to be able to survive.
That's right. Yeah. So that was my experience. Now, he dragged this out by, I didn't see him, but it was constant, like, I want to make this work. I'm sorry. I love you. You're the only person for me. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. The love bombing continued.
The breadcrumbs,
Yeah, the breadcrumbs. And then 5 weeks into this, I was home. My best friend actually came and moved in with me. So did my mum, because I just couldn't cope by myself. And 5 weeks after this, I just went and saw him. I surprised him. He didn't know I was going. I knew that he was playing tennis at this particular place, and I just rocked up because I was like, it's been 5 weeks and I don't understand what's happening, like who we are, what's going on. And he broke down and cried and just said to me, I miss you so much. I just want to come home. And I said to him, I'm happy to work through this with you. We'll go to therapy. We can change country if you want to. I don't care what we do. It's you and me, babe. Like, you and me against the world. We'll do this together. But you have to promise me that if we're working through this, you cut out all that other stuff. No more brothels, no more dating sites, like none of that. He was like, of course, you're so gracious, like amazing. 24 hours later, my friend saw him at a restaurant with his arms all over another woman. And he'd obviously been lying about the fact that he hadn't, seen anyone in those 5 weeks, and he hadn't planned on seeing anyone. And, this girl's already his girlfriend. And that was the moment that I was like, okay, the gaslighting no longer works for me. Like, you are a horrible human being and I never want to hear from you again. That it took that,
it was that moment.
It took even more abuse for me to be like, okay, I don't think he's coming home.
Yeah. And wow, how just having the abuse compounded like that. Like you extended, the olive branch, and you said, look, I'm willing to give you give this another go. And then he did it again. It must have just been soul destroying. You went back for more after everything that he did, which has got nothing to do with, obviously, with weakness or lack of intelligence. It's what we do, because once again, it is too overwhelming to think that they are that person, and you just clearly needed that one more little piece of evidence to really cement that in your mind.
Yeah, but
so what happened then, Gina?
I mean, even after that, I wanted to be angry. I wanted to be furious, and but I wasn't. And it took me an entire year to find my anger through a whole lot of therapy. The normal human experience is when someone hurts you, you feel anger. Yeah. But I learned through this that I'm just such a deep empath. And I was finding all the excuses and the reasons why he's such a broken person. I'm like, dude, he ruined like the perfect life. I was the breadwinner. We lived in our dream home. Like, he had it all. And I'm like, why would you wreck that? So obviously you must be really broken, because I don't know why you ruin all of this.
So you're still making excuses for the abuse, which is part of, the abuse. We need to rationalize it. All of these things they're doing away, and you're still looking for reasons as to why it wasn't his fault, which made, and we don't know this at the time, but it made you feel better. But it also keeps you stuck. And this is, where the trauma bond to your abuser comes into play, because we know there's nothing wrong with our intelligence. We know on a logical level what they've done, and yet we keep going back and minimizing the abuse, because not because it feels good to be with them, but because it feels bad to be without them. And that's not love, that's addiction. And that's what the trauma bond is all about. And we just keep coming up with all of these excuses, don't we? Like the heroin addict who can't stay, who's having terrible withdrawal pains, and says to themselves, yep, I didn't spend that much money on it. Everyone's got a vice, because their brain's wanting that dopamine fix from their addiction. This is why we go back, and we don't know it. That's what so makes us feel so crazy. We don't know it at the time.
Yeah, that's right. I was just like, but people have unresolved traumas in their life. Of course they're going to do silly things as a result. We have to have compassion for these people. Like, my crazy brain. And it wasn't until my therapist said to me, Gina, what if those lies that he said to you weren't because he was naive? What if it was actually him trying to manipulate you and to gaslight you? What if he was really intentional about those lies? And that was the drop moment for me, the mic drop moment, where I'm like, oh my gosh, he actually was lying to me. He wasn't just being naive and saying, oh, I didn't know this would hurt you, or I didn't realize what I was doing, and that was the moment. And I remember finally feeling my anger. I drove to the gym. I had my boxing gloves in my car.
No one want to be that boxing bag.
I punched the bag for 2 hours straight. I'm sure whoever was watching the camera at the gym was like, someone's really hurt her, because I was going ballistic.
Did you have like his picture on the boxing bag?
In my mind.
In your mind.
And then it was like, okay, now that I feel angry, now I'm empowered. And that was the moment that things really shifted.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's so textbook, though, with victims of this sort of abuse, coercive control, narcissistic abuse, to have to not find their anger for a while. And it's because they go through those stages like you did, where you're still looking for reasons to make the relationship real in some way, because it is painful to think that you're in love with a lie and that nothing was real in this relationship. And that's painful realization, because you can't have those two people in one body. Someone that doesn't flip from, your prince or your princess to someone who treats you like they despise you. They don't exist in the same body, and it's a really painful thing. And when you finally get that anger, like you did, it propels you forward. So tell us what happened when you got your anger.
Oh, when I got my anger, I filed for divorce, obviously. I had already intended on filing, but, I was much better about not communicating with him at all, doing everything through my lawyer, and just not giving him the compassion that I was before. Like, I used to say things to him like, you're not a bad person. You just did really silly things. Like, you should be kind to yourself. I was just ridiculous. But after that, he'd say something to me like, oh, this is going to be late, or whatever, this signature is going to be late. And I'd be like, not good enough. My lawyer is going to contact you about that. And I was just a lot more ruthless.
Yeah.
But
you put boundaries in place.
Yeah, the boundaries, I needed it. Yeah. It was really good. And then what happened after that? Well, when this first happened, I really lost my sense of reality. And with it, I lost almost my ability to do my everyday tasks. When you think of your morning routine, there's a flow and there's a rhythm to it. You might get up, brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, get dressed, like whatever it is, it's something that you do every day. Yeah. I had somehow lost all of that because of this thought of maybe I'm wrong about that we're meant to brush our teeth every day, or I don't know anything anymore.
I don't know what up from down. I don't know, as you said before, what sky the color is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had to
Sorry, what color the sky is.
What color is the sky? Yeah. So I had to reshape my daily habits again to relearn how to do the very basics of my life, like brushing my teeth every day, like showering. And gradually what I call micro habits. I just did one thing a day and then I built on that. So the first day I just brushed my teeth. And then the next day I brushed my teeth and showered. And I noticed that brushing my teeth the second day was easier than the first day. I'm like, this is neuroplasticity. This is, this thing that I teach about our brains being this incredible machine that is so adaptable. And if I can relearn some of the habits that I lost, then I can unlearn some of these trauma triggers that I get every time I walk out the door. Yeah. And I also had developed agoraphobia, which is the fear of leaving your own house. And so I had to work through micro habits to get back on my feet with that as well. And lots of therapy, I'm not going to discount how much therapy impacted my life too.
Could you tell us a little bit about the triggers that you found yourself facing and why you now know they came to be after your abuse while you were trying to heal?
It's crazy because triggers don't even have to have anything to do with the abuse or with the day that I found out what was happening. It was just anything that reminded me of him and of us. It was the smell of coffee, because that's how he started our day. Chicken schnitzel, because that's his favorite food. A helicopter in the sky, because he's a helicopter pilot. Black cars, because that's the car he drove. Any sort of like massage therapy place or neon lights or the smell of massage oil, like an Asian woman, because a lot of the photos that I'd seen, he had gone for Asian women. Yeah. And and any song that we ever listened to together, white Sheridan sheets, because that's what we slept on. Like, it was like triggers were in every direction.
So you had to break those conditioned responses where you'd been taught to, have fear, anxiety, because he wore that cologne or he wore, he drove a black car. Those things were paired together with your anxiety, with the feelings you had when you were being abused. So you got to break those conditioned responses now. So how do you do that with those micro habits that you started?
It started with trauma therapy, with doing exposure therapy for some of the triggers and understanding what's happening in my physiology and in my brain and why this was happening. You know, when we go through a trauma, there's these mechanisms behind the triggers, which is, so the amygdala, which is the emotional processing system in our brain, and then the hippocampus, which is involved in memory. They both play a crucial role. The amygdala can trigger our fight or flight response, and the hippocampus has trouble distinguishing past memories from a present experience. So we don't actually know, our brain's not aware that what we're experiencing is a trigger and not the actual trauma all over again. And at the same time, our prefrontal cortex, the logical part of our brain, doesn't work as well after a trauma. And so here I am, I'm less logical, I'm more emotional, and I've got no idea if this is happening again or if this is just a trigger from the trauma that has happened before. So exposure therapy was a really great first step, really hard to do. But essentially what it was is my psychologist would say to me, all right, I'm going to bring up a thought about something that's triggering for you. We started with black cars because I couldn't drive because there's black cars everywhere. So she brought up the thought of a black car. I started to get a trauma response, hyperventilating, my heart rate's through the roof, I'm sweating. And then she'd get me to get rid of the thought and to focus on what was happening in my body and to describe the sensations happening in my body. And then it took me about 15 minutes to sort of calm down the first time we did it. And then as soon as I was done, she's like, okay, we're going to go again. And she'd bring up the thought of the black car again. And we did this for the entire hour. Wow. It took from like 15 minutes to de-escalate to seconds to de-escalate by the end of the session.
Yeah.
That's how I got through these trauma triggers, is knowing that I'm having a fear response in my body, and I'm safe and I'm okay, and just to remind myself of those things.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds exactly like the therapy that someone would use. I'm assuming cognitive behavioral therapy to desensitize someone to, a phobia. It's like you get closer and closer to that spider all the while,
That's right.
Processing your feelings, recognizing that whether it's a spider or whatever it is, your fear is real. It's real for you, just like it's real for the soldier who comes home from war and has a meltdown because a balloon pops. These triggers, the fear and the feelings are terrible, and they feel really bad. So that exposure therapy sounds amazing.
It was life-changing.
Yeah.
And so I became functional, I was able to I took it step by step. It was like, okay, I have this fear of leaving my own house because the entire world is scary. I'm just going to take one step and I'm going to sit here for 1 minute and then I'm going to go back inside. And then the next day I would do 2 steps and then come back inside. Until eventually I got to my letterbox and then, down the road, and then I was okay from there. But it's also a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, after doing exposure therapy for months and then finally getting to the supermarket by myself. I remember being down the aisle and then our wedding song played on the radio. And next minute, I'm in the fetal position on the ground in the middle of Woolworths. I had to call my mum to come get me because it was too much. I was like, I can't deal with this by myself. Yeah. And so, there are things that knocked me back. And even now, it's been several years and it doesn't, what happened to me doesn't acutely impact my everyday. But interestingly, there are still things that I'm uncomfortable around. Like, I have to drive past one of his frequently visited brothels to get to my office. And I still don't like when the neon sign is brightly lit with open. I don't hyperventilate. I'm not having a trauma response, but I'm not having a great time driving past it either. I'm just like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And I can keep going.
So those things that trigger you, that going past that place, it's, I guess, those were huge, like, things for you while you were being abused. But what you've done is that those thoughts or those things don't have the same power over you anymore. And it may be that, forever or for a long time, you don't like looking at black cars or neon signs, but that's okay. We can't go back to exactly the same person we were before we were traumatized. But with the work and the healing journey that you've embarked on, those things, those thoughts, they don't bring you to your knees anymore. And you avoid them if you want, and they're going to hurt you if you come across them, and you can't predict them.
That's right. And I think, you've nailed it there. It's actually the moments where a trigger might come and I haven't been able to predict it. Like, say I'm driving through a completely new suburb and there's, a brothel there and the neon lights are on, and I'm like, whoa, I did not see that coming. It's sometimes those moments where I'm taken off guard that feel a little bit more unsettling than when I know I'm about to drive past one. But it's, the memory will always be there. But what's really great now is those big emotions are not attached to that memory anymore. I'm not getting an adrenaline dump. I'm not getting this rush in my heart. It's like, I'm okay. That this was an awful memory. But I'm safe and I'm okay.
That's right. And there's nothing wrong with me, except I was traumatized. And if there are always going to be moments and things that come up in your life that you can't predict. It doesn't mean if you have that little jolt that you're not, you've gone back to square one.
That's right. Because
that happened to you, and it's just a little pothole in your healing journey that we can't foresee. So, for everyone listening, don't beat yourself up for having that moment when those potholes come that you can't see. But, as time goes on, those potholes will get fewer and fewer, but there's always going to be one that, you can't predict. So, Gina, tell us a little bit more about your work, your expertise, your life-changing work in habit changing. This is your area. And guys, I mentioned at the beginning that Dr. Gina has written this absolutely revolutionary book called The Habit Revolution. And yes, it's a bestseller at the moment. But you can use this in all parts of your life, but in particular, you can use this to help you heal from your trauma. So tell us about your work with people and your expertise.
Well, when we think about habits, we often think of the things we do. Like, it might be I exercise or smoke or drink or, I eat healthy. Like, there's all these behaviors that we associate with them being habits. But our habits are also our thoughts, our belief systems, our reactions to things. So our habits make up to 70% of everything that we do, think, feel, and react to every day. And when I sort of pieced those things together, I realized that my trauma triggers, like the way I'm responding, can also be something that I can unlearn. I can dissociate the memories to these particular triggers in my life. I now intentionally drive a black car, and black cars are reframed for me now because I can rewire my brain.
You look that black car in the face. And,
I was just like, you're mine.
A spider or a snake. Don't do that, guys.
That's it. Exactly. Now, the beauty of creating healthy habits is, habits establish a routine, and it can offer this sense of normality and predictability, which can be so comforting and to help reduce anxiety, especially in those early days of, recovery. It can also foster a sense of control. Like, when we set and achieve small, manageable, achievable goals that we know that are going to be self-care, for example, we get a sense of control and empowerment, which is often something that gets so disrupted by trauma. So I learned really how to reshape my sense of identity and to reclaim myself again through the work that I do, through the habit change work, which is all about understanding our brain, how it works, how to create new habits, and how to break some of our old habits as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm in awe of your work, Gina, and I just think it's so important to remember what you're saying and to really, really take note that we are creatures of habit, and we need to look at the habits that were formed without our knowledge. It went by being in this relationship with our abuser, and how they just don't go away. Those habits that you form, or the behaviors you engage in, because your boundaries have been managed down to nothing and you've been essentially brainwashed. Those habits don't just go away on their own. You have to relearn and reteach yourself and undo those. And it is totally possible, which you tell everyone about in your amazing book.
Yeah, thank you. I love telling people, you're not stuck with your brain. I know that when you're experiencing something, or you're doing another habit again and again and again, it feels like it's taking over your life. You feel like so out of control around it. And I know that feeling deeply, but I also know what it's like to break away from those really stubborn habits and to have a new normal when none of us are stuck with our brain. No matter how old we are, no matter how long we've been doing something for, we have the power to rewire our brain and to reshape the way that we think and move and see the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the most important things in our healing through all of this is practicing self-compassion and taking things so slow. I think that was one of the hardest things for me. I wanted to wake up and be the person that I was before you
were traumatized.
Yeah. I was fit. I was active. I was the head of a department in university. Like, I was really happy and successful. And it took such a long time to get back to that. And I was frustrated at myself. I remember the very first day at the gym, back at the gym after maybe 2 months of not going at all, I couldn't lift the weights that I was lifting before. I'd lost a significant amount of weight because I wasn't really eating. I wasn't sleeping. I did 2 rounds of IVF, which really just was so difficult emotionally and physically for me because I was freezing my eggs. Of course, I couldn't lift this weight. And I had to constantly come back home to myself and just be kind to myself and not have a goal of bouncing back. I was like, no, my goal has to be about bouncing forward, finding the new me, which is traumatized, but is also in a process of healing and recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I always tell my beautiful clients is that when they want to get back to exactly the same person they were before they were abused, is that you can't be exactly the same person because it happened. But it happened to you. But instead of being like here is a roadblock in front of you that you keep stumbling over all the time, it's going to be, back here, down here. It's going to be a part of you because it happened, but you'll be able to draw thoughts of it without it having that massive impact on you. And you will take a slightly different trajectory in life, but you will be free and you will be happy. And Dr. Gina is living proof of that. So, Gina, I just wanted to say thank you so much for telling us your story today and, providing us with so much information and insights into how people can heal from the trauma of narcissistic abuse through habit changes. I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful. I know that the people listening will be grateful too. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Nova. It's been awesome to chat with you.
My absolute pleasure. And guys, don't forget to grab your copy of Dr. Gina's book, which is called The Habit Revolution. Did you want to tell people just quickly, Gina, where they can get there or how they can contact you maybe?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so jump on my website. It's drginacleo.com. And on there, I have a free 5-day habit change masterclass that you can sign up to. You can also access my book from there. So it tells you all the places where it's available. It's paperback, Audible, Kindle, however you like it. Or of course on my social media. So I'm generally most active on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm at Dr. Gina Cleo there as well.
There you go. Don't forget to get your copy. It will be invaluable, not just with your narcissistic abuse and healing from your trauma, but in every part of your life. We're creatures of habit, and some of the habits we form, we really don't want to have. So, yeah, it will really be an invaluable book to have on your bookshelf. Okay, Gina, thank you.
Thank you.
And I will see you soon. Bye.
Awesome.
And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. I hope you found this discussion with Dr. Gina as insightful and inspirational as I do. Boy, do I have some habits to change. Certainly knowing that the research is out there to know how to rewire your brain and replace those old habits that are creating such negativity in our lives, and replacing them with positive ones that make us healthier and happier. Certainly something we really need to focus on after the trauma of narcissistic abuse. On that note, guys, it's bye from me for now. But before I go, don't forget, if you'd like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me, doesn't matter where you are in the world, just see my website link in the description for the podcast, and flick me an email, and I'd love to be able to support you on your healing journey. And of course, don't forget to get your copy of my best-selling book, Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. Until tomorrow's episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are certainly worthy of a whole lot more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.